Today, we're going to talk about exotic or downright weird crimes that are still on the books in Washington state. We've been a state here since 1889, and a lot of laws have been made during that time. Some crimes on the books are still relevant today, but others are just not. So without further ado, let's dive into 4 of the weirdest crimes in Washington. Number 1 is malicious sprinkler installation. Yeah, you heard that right. If you maliciously and willfully install or maintain a fire sprinkler system in a building that threatens the safety of anyone in the building, that's a felony. The law was passed in 1992. How exactly would a sprinkler system threaten a user? I guess I can think of 2 ways. The first is if it simply doesn't work, so in the event of a fire, no water is flowing to put it out. The second maybe is that something other than water comes out, or the flow of water is not sufficient. A scary thought. But it's only a crime if the contractor or installer puts it in on purpose, so negligence or accidental malfunction wouldn't qualify as a crime. While this is a weird crime, it's grounded in the policy that fire suppression systems should be installed by qualified professionals. So if a fire does happen, the sprinklers will work and the risk to people and property is minimized. Next is one that seems like it would only take common sense and good parenting to understand, but Washington went ahead and put a criminal penalty on it. It's family abandonment. That means if you have a child dependent upon you and you intentionally abandon the child, you've committed a felony. It's been a law since at least 1907. The twin of this law is that it's also a crime to intentionally fail to provide food, clothing, shelter, and medical care to a dependent child, but that's only a gross misdemeanor. Interestingly, there is one exception to the law, and that says if you're dropping off a newborn at a fire station or appropriate location, you're not guilty of abandoning your child. Within the first 72 hours of a baby's life, a parent can drop the child off for Child Protective Services without any criminal liability. But it makes me wonder if this was a big problem in Washington in the early 1900s or something, and that's why they had to make a law that says a parent must take care of their own kids. Sticking with the family theme, third on the list is the crime of child substitution. Yeah, they actually made a law that says it's a crime to try to substitute one child for another with intent to deceive the parent. The law says any child that's been placed in the care of another by a parent for schooling, nursing, or other purposes must be returned as the same child to that parent later. Anyone attempting to give a substitute child back to the parent is guilty of a felony. So many questions. First, how? Seriously, how would this ever even happen? A parent drops off their kid to school and the teacher returns a different kid to the parent? It makes no sense. Next, why was this law put into place? It's been the law since 1909. That must have been a wild time to be a kid around here, I guess. Our final weird crime is Greyhound Racing. Washington has a lot of anti-gambling laws on the books still, and one of those prohibits a person from holding live greyhound races for gambling purposes. That's sort of weird on its own, but 2 things stand out to me. One is that the law only prohibits racing greyhounds, but no other breed of dog or other animal. So I guess if you wanted to gamble on racing corgis or pigs, have at it. Second is that it is allowed to race greyhounds under the law as long as there's no gambling involved. The anti-gambling sentiment was very high in the 1970s, so much so that a whole bunch of crimes against gambling were put on the books in 73. Banning greyhound racing didn't happen until 96 though. With the current trend nationally to allow sports betting and companies like DraftKings and FanDuel profiting handsomely from it, Washington state is an outlier who still bans online sports betting, and has even put updated laws relating to banning sports betting on the books this year. But sports betting is allowed on tribal lands here in Washington, which is one reason why the casinos on tribal lands are so popular. Thanks for watching.